In this lesson, we will be covering styles in regards to how they affect dimensions. The file that I have open is called styles.idw, and in this file I'm going to pretty much be working in this base view here. As you move into the specific dimension, you can double click on that dimension and a dialog box will appear which will allow you to go back and make some text changes. So for example, if this was a typical dimension, I could just add some text back underneath that. Go ahead, click OK. And you can see exactly the appearance there. Let me double click on that again. And let's remove that text. At this point, you can also change the justification of the text itself. You could hide the dimensional value. So for example, if this was a tabulated drawing, I could say I want that to be A, as you can see there, and let's unhide that. At this point, I can also launch the text editor if I want to make more text changes to this. Also from here, we can bring in the values of specific parameters, model or the user parameters, as well as we can go back and add some symbols if we wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to click cancel. You can also add symbols here by clicking the insert symbol list. And there we go. The other things that we can do by double clicking in here is I can set the precision and tolerance. If I needed to, I could go back and make this symmetric. And let's just do the upper at 0.01. Click OK. And we can see that that change appears. You can just change that back to the default. I can override the number of units that are going to be displayed. Again, I'll change that back to 2. We can also create an inspection dimension from this. So let's go back and just select the oval. So I now have an inspection dimension for this. So that's all done by double clicking on it. Now let's move on here. There are some other options that are available. If you move your cursor over a specific dimension, you can right click, and we have some other properties here. So for example, under options, you can control how the arrowheads are going to be displayed to the inside, outside. You can affect the leader if you wanted to. Change that. Again, I'm just going to right click. We can go back and change the precision. So in this case, let's change that back to 4 decimal places. I can go back and do an edit. And you'll see by doing the edit here, it was exactly the same as I did with the double click on the previous dimension. I can also, again, right click and click on the text option, which will bring up the dialog box, again, that I had up before. This is where we can make all of our changes as well. Another method for making a change to a specific dimension or multiple dimensions is I can go back and I can select on the value, and from the standard toolbar select on the drop down list, and these are my available dimension styles here. So in this case I could change this to fraction if I wanted to, and I can select multiple dimensions if I want. As long as they're the exact same type, we can go back and override these. So in this case, let's change them to inch and metric. And you'll notice that this one is still my inspection dimension. So as long as those styles are there, that's pretty easy to do. But now let's take a look at creating a new style or altering the existing one. So there's a couple different methods for doing this. One of the easiest ones is select your dimension that you want to change. So for example, let's zoom up on this 75. I'm going to right click. And let's bring that up so we can see it here. It's getting cut off on the screen. So if I right click on it, I can edit the dimension style directly from here. And if I do that, it's going to bring up the Style and Standards editor. And you'll notice the dimension here is the default millimeter style. So I could go back and make that change. I'm going to go ahead and click Done for a second. You can also access the dimension styles from the Format pull-down. Click under the Style and Standard editor. And if I scroll on down here, we have a whole bunch of different standards that are available here. In this case, at that standard level, where it's showing all styles, I'm just going to go back and say let's display the active standard, and that will really eliminate a whole bunch of standards and styles that we don't really need to be seen in this specific drawing. Also, under the default standard, this is where you can go back and set, do you want to do the first or third angle projection, the global line type scale for your hidden center lines if they're not being displayed correctly, the line type, the available styles. So in this case, if I click under the dimension, these were the standards for the dimension styles that were available in the drop-down list when I selected on the dimension before. Under the object default, this is where we're going to go back and determine how the dimensions are going to be displayed when they're first created. But for now, let's jump on down to the dimension option. And we were working under the default millimeter. So in this case, let's change it to 3 decimals. And in this case, let's also display a leading 0. From here, you'll notice that there are whole bunch of other tabs here. So the alternate units, if you wanted to display both, in this case, millimeter and inch or inch and millimeter, you could do that here. Under the display, this is where you're going to affect how the dimensions are actually going to appear. The text, so how high, what is the style of the text. You'll also notice here that it says note text ANSI. From here, we're actually calling out another style. So if I click under the edit text style, it's going to take me back down to the other style. So a style can call out another style. I'm going to jump back to the dimension millimeter again. Under the tolerance, this is where, again, we're going to set, when I place those values here, what's going to happen by default. In this case, we will have no tolerance set for each of them individually here. Under the option, this is, again, you have a lot of different control on how those dimensions are going to be displayed, and the same with the leader and the notes. And some of these, again, we'll talk about these in later lessons here. But if I go back to the units just to verify we're at 3 decimal places with our leading zeros, let's go ahead and click Save. Done. And you'll notice the dimensions here are all at 3 decimal places, at least the ones that I did not override. So now, if I came back here, I want to create a new dimension style. So I'm not real happy, let's say, with all the ones that are there. For this specific drawing, I'm going to create a new one. So again, I'm going to go under the Style and Standard Editor. And I'm going to select a dimension style that's going to be close to what I'm looking for. I'm going to click on New. And let's change the name of this to CBT millimeter. And you'll see that I'm going to add it to the standard because I want that to appear in my drop-down list. In this case, let's change it to 1 decimal place. And let's save that. And you notice nothing really has changed because I created a new standard. If I select on a specific dimension here, let's change this 16. From my drop-down list, I can go back and change that to the CBT. If I create a new dimension, switch to the annotation panel, and let's just grab a couple points here. You'll notice it's still at 3 decimal places. And the reason it's at 3 decimal places is I never set the object defaults. So if I go back to the Style Standard Editor, from the object defaults, under the ANSI millimeter, I'm going to filter out just to the dimension objects. In this case, I'm concerned about the linear dimension. And here I can change this to the CBT millimeter style that we just created. And I'm also going to go back to the default standard here. So you'll notice when I go back here and click on the object defaults, it's telling me that it's for the ANSI millimeter. So everything that was created with ANSI millimeter, in this case, is going to have our standard. So in this case, the CBT millimeter. So let's go ahead and click Done. So now all of my dimensions here that were set with that style have been changed. Now the style only exists in this specific drawing. If I go back under the Format pull-down, you'll notice the option Save Style to the Style Library. That is grayed out, meaning that I cannot write back to the main library. And that's being set from the project. So if I go under the File pull-down and click on Projects, under the CBT project, Use Style Library, right now it's read-only, meaning that that change is only going to occur at a higher level, and all I can do is read into it. I cannot write back to that library. So right now in this project it's read-only because I have existing files open, so I can't make the changes. But if it was set to yes, then I could write back to the style standard itself. If I set it to no, it will only be grabbing the styles that are contained in this specific file.